Disrupt our one thing.
I know.
I'm so glad.
We're about to start this special call meeting of the Sumner County Board of Education. Before we do, I'm going to stand for a moment of silence and follow that by the Pledge of Allegiance. Anyone who'd like to join me, please feel free to do so. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tall guy sits in my chair when I'm down here. Before we get underway, I'd like to recognize Miss Ashley Mize. She's here with Leadership Sumner with us tonight, so we'd like to thank you for being here. You didn't know I knew you, did you?
No, I
I don't. Sarah told me.
Thank you, Sarah.
Well, welcome. Glad to have you.
Thank you so much.
Glad to be here. All right, first item on the agenda. We don't have any speakers tonight? No, sir. All right. First item on the agenda is discussion, the only item on the agenda is discussion and interaction regarding a resolution expressing the board's opposition to school vouchers. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion approved by Ms. Andrews, second by Mr. Daniels. Any discussion? Mr. Graham.
I have a couple of questions, and then after my questions, I'd like to have an opportunity to share my thoughts as well. My first question is in the language when it talks about educational savings accounts. That's not us speaking out against educational savings accounts in general, correct? That's just us saying that we don't support ESAs in relation to the voucher bill. Can I get clarification on that?
I do not have an answer for you, sir.
I would say, like, I don't want to put words in the board's mouth. I mean, maybe that's something we need to clarify, but when I read it, I was thinking it was specifically geared towards the definition of educational savings accounts as defined in the House and Senate bill.
And I don't want to. I know this resolution is figurative and doesn't really do anything except express our opinion. And I might even ask Ms. Hawkins if she would chime in because she's really good at wording. But maybe if we could add language, and I'll make the motion if I need to, but if we could add language that says something along the lines of educational savings accounts, ESAs, in association with Governor Lee's Education Freedom Act. I just want to make it clear that we're not against educational savings accounts because those can be used for many things.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Hayes.
Sure, thank you. And what else are we talking about? Like a personal savings account for our children?
Well, no, a 529 savings account. So, you have the opportunity as a citizen to invest your money into a savings account, and then the dividends aren't taxable as long as you use those dividends for education, which could be private school, it could be college, it could be trade school, it could be anything related to education. I just don't want we as a school board to say that we're anti-educational savings account with this resolution.
That's understandable. I didn't entertain that motion.
Second.
Did you want to make?
Yeah, so I'd like to make a motion that we add language after the words educational savings accounts in relation to Governor Lee's Education Freedom Act.
All right. And Mr. Daniels seconded. Any discussion on the amended, on the motion? The amendment motion. I can't talk tonight. Seeing none, so all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. We'll add that language into it. Now we're back to the main topic. Any discussion? You got further discussion on that?
I have one more question.
Okay, sure.
I would respectfully like to ask for our director of schools to give his opinion on this, as our director who's kept up with legislation and can kind of tell us where everything is.
So Personally, I'm always hesitant on non-binding resolutions because my question, this is more really like when I was on the commission, like I felt a lot of times these were get people to take a stand and they didn't necessarily mean, but it also does express a legislative body's intentions and expresses that viewpoint to their elected representatives. Dr. Phillips said this a number of years ago when we were going through if you remember back to around 17, 18, 19, where we had 3 straight years where online testing was an absolute debacle, and several counties voted to not give the test, and then they repented because the state said, would you like to give us our money back in one lump sum payment, or would you like to give it in 3 installments? Realistically, here's my concern, is realistically when we are looking at the needs that we have for our people, in terms of compensation, in terms of capital projects and things like that, I'm always concerned, the legislature has made a very concerted effort over the last 5 or 10 years to dramatically increase the amount of money that they've given us for K-12 education. I don't necessarily like, it's not gratitude or ingratitude, but it is like, I do want to be clear that we appreciate the strides that we've made in Tennessee on teacher compensation, CTE, ISM grants, things like that. The legislature has provided a significant amount of funding, and I want to say that we're appreciative of that money, while the board is also. At the end of the day, whatever y'all decide, I'm gonna I'll send the resolution. I'll go with it, but I do think it's important for us to express to, especially the state representatives that we have in Sumner County that have worked really hard to support us. Leader Lamberth showed up when we had our charter school application, and he stood right over there and gave a public comment. Elected representatives from other counties that had charter school resolutions did not make that stand, and they received charter schools. So I'm appreciative of the work that our legislative delegation has done over the years, whether it's Senator Hale, Leader Lamberth, Representative Garrett, and Representative Slater. I'm appreciative of the work that they've done. So, I always worry a little bit about how that's received, but at the same time, I respect the board's right as elected officials to speak on behalf of your constituents. I have real questions. Like, I'll be honest, there are things in the House bill that I like. I like the reduced testing. I like the flexibility for high school. I like the increased time for teacher recertification. I like the reduced teacher evaluations. There are several things in there. Obviously, the maintenance fee money, there's some things in there that are good. But, at the end of the day, I have some real questions and concerns about, us losing. At the end of the day, the pie is the pie. And I just want to make sure, as we expressed back in October and November, we want as much of that pie as we can, because when we're going into budget season, I can assure you, and when we look at capital a bit later, I can assure you we want every penny and every crumb that's on the table, because our job is to do the very best for Sumner County kids that we can. So,
Mr. Graham, you want to follow up?
I do, and thank you very much. I appreciate you giving your insight. Before we cast this vote, I want to make it known why I'm going to vote in agreement of this resolution. I think the voucher plan itself, in principle, is bad, no matter what you try to add on to entice us to approve it as a legislature, and I appreciate them as well. But I don't think you should combine everything into one bill, number one. The resolution, no matter how they word it, no matter how they manipulate it, it will not do anything to better education in our state. The number one reason that most children succeed in education is not so much which school they go to, it's their parents' backing. It's parents who push them. And the reason, in my opinion, that children do well in private schools is because their parents spend a good deal of money to send them there and would like to see some return on their investment. If we just simply sent kids to the good schools, quote unquote, then all underprivileged kids would go to Merrill Hyde tomorrow. That's not what makes the school good. Merrill Hyde is an outstanding school because it has exemplary students. They tested to get in. These are children who are going to excel academically. it would not make any sense just to take a failing student and put them in Merrill Hyde and say, you're doing great. Well, same thing would happen in private schools. The other thing is from just an analytical standpoint, if you start giving vouchers for more students to go to private schools, all that's going to do is create an increased demand for private schools, and an artificial demand for private schools. And those private schools are, through necessity, they're going to have to hire more staff, they're going to have to build more facilities, they're going to have to increase their infrastructure. And ultimately to do that, they're going to raise tuition. And so people who are disadvantaged will be priced out because the voucher won't cover enough of the tuition for them to go there. And then students of middle-class families who have been making sacrifices and eating beans and rice and doing what they can to make sure their students have access to private schools will be priced out of the system altogether. And so ultimately, we're going to divert public funds to private schools so they can grow, and then the wealthier students and their families will be the only ones with access. So as a conservative and as a supporter of public schools in Tennessee, that's why I'm going to vote for this resolution to express my disdain for the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Ms. Hayes?
Yes, thank you, Chair Brewer. Off of Mr. Graham's comments, I had Jerry made copies for you guys. I had spent hours reading through the legislation and the fiscal note that goes along with it. So you got the governor at 144 million, you got the Senate at 75 million, and you got the House at $300 million. Our state income revenue has dropped 0.5% in the state of Tennessee. This was even projected, so it was reckless to me that you would even be going down the path of spending this kind of money when your revenue is dropped. Can you imagine these governing bodies going before the sharks on Shark Tank and presenting this as possibly a commodity or a business to invest in? They would tear them up. This is reckless spending. 60% of people can use this for private school. So Tammy Hayes, who has her son at MBA, could take that $7,000 toward the $30,000 fee at MBA and use that. 60% of the population will be able to do that. 40%. Now each bill has different components. Even using the name Education Savings Account. When I started on the board 10 years ago, they were called vouchers. They changed the verbiage to ESAs. Now, school choice, school choice. It's like the abortion topic. Let's don't call it that. Let's call it pro-choice. So it's how you sell it. So they're selling something that really, financially, and as a conservative, a fiscal conservative, who is a Republican, I see this reckless spending. This is a target that keeps moving. I don't even know what I'm resolving against or for. So they want us to buy into this, and I haven't seen a final product. They can't even get consensus. And they expect us just to go, oh yeah, this is great. I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but this makes no sense. It makes no sense. All of us on this board would not be serving on the Sumner County Public School Board if we did not care about educating children. I care about the children in Shelby County and in Davidson County and in Hamilton County, where they run a pilot program. And you know what the commissioner said when she was asked about it? She said nothing remarkable came out of that. Are they going to have data? These are tax dollars. Is Kraft Hayes with the $7,000 going to have data out there for the public to see like we have for public education? We have performance report cards. We've got achievement. We've got all these hurdles we have to jump to prove. How are they going to track my $7,000 with my son, with John Doe? And also, the Senate can't work out. Kraft Hayes decides he wants to go, I want my child to go to Trousdale County. You could jump over to another county. And then the Senate tells us we're going to get $7,000. So when John Doe leaves Sumner County Schools, he gets $7,000, and then this county's going to get $7,000. I said, is this long term? 1 year. Think this through down the road. You know, this is bankrupt states. There's just got to be a better way to address underachieving school systems, students. If you got to revamp Shelby County schools, Davidson County schools, from the leaders from the top down, do what you got to do in the failing school districts. Leave exemplary school districts alone. 300 million is a lot of millions. I've said my piece, so you know where I stand. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes. Anyone else? Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Ms. Andrews.
Yeah, I do want to acknowledge in the resolution where we do give credit and do acknowledge the investment that our state legislatures, specifically our local representatives, have done over the course of several years as far as investing more dollars. As Dr. Langford said, you know, we have gotten more funding for various things, CTEs, raises, and so forth. But we also have to acknowledge that inflation is real, and even where those dollars have been significant with today's inflation, it's not as much. So we need to have continuous investment added, and as you know, as it says in the resolution, you know. I believe it's the House bill has, in addition to vouchers, kind of to appease and say, yes, we're going to support public schools too, the addition of $75 per student for infrastructure, which would be $2.26 million for Sumner County, additional funding for teacher pay and health insurance, decreased standardized testing hours, and everyone says amen. More flexibility on teacher evaluations, corrections to the 3rd and 4th grade retention law, and flexibility on teacher certification. All of those things are great, and 100% I support those and thank those down at the Capitol that are willing to support those things. But I think all of those things too can be supported outside of vouchers. And I've expressed that to our local representatives that greatly appreciate those and wholeheartedly support those things and would want to see those. I just think that we can do those outside of vouchers. From the things that I have seen, I've asked and cannot have it spoken to me is, where have we seen this successful? And it's crickets. And so if this is something that's happened across the United States and we can't say, hey, look at them, they did it correctly, I don't want Tennessee to be the next guinea pigs. Let's continue to invest in our public schools, our public education. A lot of that is the way that we turn schools around, or by having people in schools. We can't have people in schools because we don't have the funds to hire them. Let's make sure that we're investing. Let's get the people there. Let's support our students. Let's support our staffs. But vouchers are not the answer.
Thank you, Ms. Andrews. Mr. Lancaster.
Yes, sir. The only thing, you know, y'all have made some good points, and I'm not here to criticize either one of you. The problem that I keep looking at, I'm by nature a numbers person, so I just can't get the math to work on it. I try to think, okay, because people tell me, well, hey, the $7,000 is going to follow the student, and so that money is leaving the district, but so is the student and the cost associated with that student. But there's no apples to apples comparison with that, and that's where it loses me, because by the bill's own language, they estimate 40% of these students are going to come from public schools. All right, so then I look out there, all right, we got 20,000 students that it's going to impact, that's 8,000 students. All right, there are multiple counties in Tennessee that don't even have a private school that would qualify under this plan. Sumner County has, I think, 14. Not only that, Sumner County has a little over 6% of the entire state private school students reside in Sumner County. We have a disproportionate share of private school students to total private school students that we do from public school students to total public school students. So if everything else is being equal, and the way, as an accountant, that I would do a pro forma on this, like what do we stand to lose? I say, okay, well, 20,000 students, 40%, that's 8,000 students. 6% of that are potentially going to be from Sumner County. That's 480 students that we would potentially lose out of our schools. We got 52 schools, I might be wrong on the math there, 52, 53, somewhere. 53 schools. Those 480 are not going to come from a specific school, a specific grade, a specific, they're just scattershot across the county. So there's no cost savings unless you say, well, we don't need as many teachers at this school, or we don't need, an assistant principal or a bus driver or something. So we stand to potentially lose 480 times 7,000, which I think, if I did my math last night correctly, somewhere around $3.4 million in our budget, but we don't necessarily save anything. And I can't look people in the eye and say, hey guys, this is okay, the money's going to follow the student. If we had started down a road 30 years ago with this would be how we do things, that's one thing. But basically it's, this is how we've operated as a public school versus a private school versus a homeschool system for years. And then all of a sudden we're going to kind of throw a wrench in it and say, well, we're going to do it different. It doesn't set up for success. And that's if everything is kept, kind of controlled like this. The one good thing I will say, if there is such a thing, is they did somewhat try to control it. There have been states that just universally opened it, didn't put any limits or anything on it. And that has been where significant budget nightmares have been created. The problem here also, though, is, 2019 they passed it to go for, Memphis and certain school districts across the state. They're opening up and saying, no, but we're only going to limit it and fund it for 20,000. But again, the hardest step in any process is the very first one. And if it's a bad process or a good process, I'm just very hesitant to say, hey, let's think about what we're doing here before we go down this road, because who's to say 3 years down the line you might have a completely different legislative group, governor, whatever, and they're like, hey, let's keep this thing going and expand it even more. I'm at the end of the day, people are like, well, this has been a Republican versus Democrat, whatever. This is, to me, it's not a public school versus private school. It's just a math problem. And I tell people a lot of times in my job, the kind of the mantra is the numbers don't lie. And, you know, the numbers don't lie in this scenario, and I just cannot make the math work to where I'm saying, well, guys, this will not impact Sumner County Public Schools. I just can't. I can't say that. And if it does not help us with teacher retention, student improvement, or, you know, making the investment that years and years of people have made before us and after us in Sumner County schools, then I can't be for it. So that's my piece on it.
Thank you, Mr. Lancaster. I'm looking for my light. I don't have a light anymore. Mr. Daniels.
Yeah, I'm not going to repeat what everybody said. I agree with the comments that have been made so far. But, you know, I was thinking back as I read through this voucher bill and looking at the numbers that are connected to the students and, you know, how that can impact our school system, you know, and even the students that walk our hallways. You know, I was thinking about Mr. Wise last week, or at our last meeting, where he talked about peanut butter, right? Getting peanut butter to our students. And I remember back a couple years ago when we provided lunches to students for free, coming out of the COVID year. And I remember there was a lot of discussion as that went away about how it's not fair to provide lunches to students because there are students in our county that can afford to pay for lunch and they're getting it for free. And we don't want to pay for them to have lunch when they can afford to pay for lunch. So let's just get rid of the program altogether, right? So if you do the math, a family of 3, or a family that has 3 students in the school system right now, paying lunch at $3 a day for 5 students, or for 3 students for 180 days, that comes out to about $1,620. We had an argument that that was too much to pay for a student to have food, because there are some students that could afford to have that food. It wasn't fair that other students that couldn't got the same deal, right? And so now what we're saying is that these students that could afford the food, the reason that we ended that program, now we want to give them money to go to schools that they're probably already going to, right? And so what we're saying is that, hey, food's not important, but money to keep you in that private school, to offset that cost for you that's already there. And yeah, maybe some students will benefit from that, but most won't. And if you look at our county and you look at the socioeconomic setup of the way our county is, you know, there are students that would love to be able to use that voucher if it was available to them, but they have parents that work. They don't have the benefit or the privilege to have parents that are at home that can take them to those schools and let them or participate in after-school activities. Heck, some of them are the same students that are worried about their kid having a meal when they get home, right? They're the ones that need the peanut butter that Mr. Wise was talking about. And so I find it hard to be able to support a program when we're saying let's fund those that already have, when we can't even fund those that don't. So if we're talking about what's best for students, I'd rather give them food than a rebate. And that's why I'm going to support this resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels. Ms. White.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Wow. I certainly appreciate the comments, starting with Mr. Graham. Ms. Hayes, you stole some of my thunder, but I'm going to go on and repeat you anyway. All of you, Mr. Lancaster, Ms. Andrews, Mr. Daniels, thank you for your comments. You know, for last day of August of this year, Mr. Brewer, Mr. Gregory, and I will have sat on this board for 16 years. And this board is the board of the Sumner County Public Schools. I don't know how any of the 10 of us who are present tonight, if we did not support this resolution in opposition to the governor's voucher system or whatever they want to try to sell it by. I don't see how you could go look in the mirror, and for me that's scary enough anyway, and say, I serve on the Sumner County Schools Public Education Board. You know, we've all gotten well over 100 emails, cut and paste, whatever it is. And the last paragraph says, as if I had to tell you all, please don't let school districts' self-interest. You darn tootin', my self-interest is Sumner County Public Schools. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Wise. Ms. Hawkins?
Well, to follow up on that, we took an oath to support the Sumner County Public Schools. That is the people who elected us. That's what they expect from us, is to support the Sumner County Public Schools. I grew up in the Chattanooga City schools, all 12 years. There were people who paid for my education who didn't know me, I didn't know them. It was paid for by the citizens of Chattanooga. To just make it plain and simple, in my opinion, this is not about a child's choice, because they already have that. You have the choice to go to a private school. You have the choice right now to homeschool. And those who think that $7,000 is going to make the difference between not going to private school and going to private school, I think that that's very, very unlikely. I feel like this cut and dried. This is not about about child's choice. This is about money. And just plain and simple, this is about money. And as Mr. Wise's, the sign on his computer, what does it say?
For the children.
For the children. That's why I'm here. I'm here for the children. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hawkins. Anyone else? Ms. Hayes?
And without repeating, I do want to thank publicly our legislators that represent us. They are accessible. They reach out. We have conversations. I'm grateful for their investment in education and what they have done and what the monies that have allowed us to do the things that we need to do. To the point of the $7,000 that leaves, whatever that number is going to end up being. I've seen 7,200, whatever it's going to be attached to that child. And the possibility that we get the 1 year of the $7,000 back. Still, the family who leaves the county with 3 children to go to private education. The cost for us, with inflation, the cost of everything is going to go up. Paying our teachers, the maintenance of our buildings, the air conditioning of that space, the space is still there. The cost is going to go up for us in this county. And our county commission needs to be concerned about this because there's a maintenance of effort. And the cost of educating children is going to continue to go up. Just want to make that point. But I'm thankful for them. I just cannot buy into the vouchers.
Thank you, Ms. Hayes. Mr. Lacy?
Yeah, it's kind of, I guess I'm the one oddball in the group. You know, I guess Mr. Wise made the statement, how could you support the governor's bill, I guess, if you're here for the kids. Sumner County Schools has blessed my family since I've lived in Sumner County. My wife's a teacher in Sumner County Schools. The schools have been great to my family. My kids have thrived in Sumner County Schools, but I also support the kids, but I also support parents and their right to choose. And I've already mentioned that I really don't care for the Senate's version of this bill, but I do support our state representative's bill. I don't necessarily support everything in it so far. I really think it's kind of foolish to do this right now when we don't even know what the bill is going to be. Well, we have no idea, and we're making a resolution that states that we don't like the bill. We don't even really know what the bill is. I would love to make a motion to postpone this until we really even know what the bill will be. We don't really know what the bill will be. I know I've talked with William Lambert and got some numbers, and my numbers are directly from him. It's his bill. And you know, in the last 10 years, school funding, it seems like this is about school funding. It seems like we're worried about losing funding, public schools having an unfair advantage. But like I said, I support our schools, I support our students, but I also support parents. When I ran for office, I said I'd be a voice for parents. And it seems like the majority of the people in my district want school choice. They want to have a say in where their kids go to school. They want to have a say in what their kids learn. But it just, in the last 10 years, 10 years ago, our funding for education in Tennessee was $3.5 billion. And in 10 years, it's gotten up to $8.5 billion for public education in Tennessee. I think we have good funding. Total funding in the state for K through 12 education is $8.5 billion. Proposed for public scholarship is less than 1.5, it's around 1.5%. It's small, it's a small number. Like I said, it's a small number, and that money is still going to educate kids. If you care about kids, that money is still going to educate children in Tennessee. New funding proposed, this is the state's version, is around $400 million for the state House bill. $261 million for public schools. We're increasing funding for Tennessee schools, public schools. We're increasing funding. And for the scholarships, it's around $144 million, which is around 1.5% of the whole education budget in the state of Tennessee. Also, that $144 million is coming from the general fund. They are not taking money from the public education fund. It's coming out of a completely different fund. But people make the statement that, well, it's going to punish schools, it's going to give us an unfair advantage. And I don't want our schools to have an unfair advantage, but I do support parents having a right to choose where their kids go to school. I mean, we're doing this for the kids, and I'm doing this being on the school board to give parents a voice. That's why I wanted to run for school board, was to give parents a voice. And I'm really appalled. We've got 3 or 4 visitors in here tonight. I would have thought the house would have been full. We've got 100, 150 emails for the governor's bill. I think I've got 1 email for my district against the governor's bill. Like I said, I'm in support of school choice. Under the State House bill, our current funding will increase. And I guess there's kind of some question where our income will increase under TISA. I know some have said it'll be anywhere from 4 to 7 million. So I guess the governor's bill, the House bill, will increase our funding 4 to 8 million. But so like I said, I support parents in their right to choose. I actually had an educator give me some talking points, and this is kind of their words. They wanted to come here tonight, but have you ever heard those saying, you don't bite the hand that feeds you? They didn't want to come and feel like they were causing trouble, so they gave me, I guess, a couple of their talking points in bullet point. And if I could, if the chairman allowed me, I'd like to read it. But it said the money for school choice is separate from established educational budgets and will not affect the school system. Educational funding is attached to the individual student per state law, not the school district. The school will still receive the same amount of money per student per year regardless of school choice. Sumner County Schools spends roughly $9,500 a year per student. School choice will accomplish the same goal with only 7,000 students per year, saving the state taxpayers potentially huge sums of money. Davidson County is around $12,500 per year per student, with terrible educational outcomes. And like I said, this is not my words. This is a Sumner County teacher educator. It is not their money, speaking of the government or the school system, it is the money of the taxpayer. We are simply allowing parents the opportunity to use their tax dollars to educate their children in a manner that is more effective for them. There is tremendous waste in the educational system. School choice is more efficient. And this, like I said, this is not my words, but an educator in Sumner County Schools. This will force educational competition and force innovation and change within the public schools, in that they have to compete with alternative choices. If public schools are doing a good job, why would they be threatened by allowing parents a choice of how and where to educate their children? It will only go to subsidize those who are already in the private schools. And he asked the board, he said, where is your proof? You know, we'll say that this will hurt public schools. He wants to know, where is your proof? What options would $7,000 a year make possible for the working poor and those zoned for failing schools? And I'll stop with that. Like I said, I support our schools, I support our students, but also support parents. I want to represent them, and that's where I'll be voting no. The first 5 points on this, where it says whereas, I support those 100%. But like I said, I would like to see what the final bill would be before I say I oppose it. So Chairman, I would love to make the motion that we postpone this until we actually know what the bill will be.
Making a motion to defer, sir?
Yes, sir.
Motion's been made to defer. Is there a second?
No. The reason I'm saying that,
Stop. We're waiting for a second. Apparently is there no second?
I'll second it to bring it to a vote.
All right, there's been a second. There is no discussion, so it's straight up now vote. So, your motion to defer has been made, a second has been made. All in favor to defer?
what is the, okay, go
His
ahead.
motion is to defer till we hear what the final bill's gonna be. All in favor to defer, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Your motion fails, Mr. Lacy. Mr. Gregory?
The reason I voted no, I'm not sure the state legislature will be going on when we have our next meeting. I don't believe it will be. And another thing, I respectfully agree with part of what you said and respectfully disagree. School choice would possibly save a little money, one way. But let me tell you how it would cost tons of money another way. That's the problem we got into several years ago. When you had school choice, and people were going out of zone, unlimited numbers. And our school board and director eliminated that. And when they were going out of zone by leaps and bounds, we had as many as 16, 17, 18 portables in some schools. And when I came on the school board, there were 38 portables in Portland. And a lot of it was because, and I had many, many calls saying, we got to eliminate this the transfer situation where people go out of zone, because you cannot get a handle on what your building program will be in the future. And some of these were engineers and had a real good handle, and they had children in school. But I will say this, in case of emergencies, and there are some, then I think, we're out of zone. I think it's been handled very well by our principals and the director of schools about children moving from one school to another. That's in Sumner County. Now, I can't answer to all counties. Very few counties have where you can go out of zone, I think. I'm not saying there should be absolutely none, but I think it should be very limited.
Thank you, Mr. Gregory. Mr. Graham?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I'd like to also applaud Mr. Lacey for speaking with his conviction. It's probably pretty difficult to look at 9 of your peers who you know are all one-sided on an issue and still speak from your heart and speak conviction and speak to what your constituents have expressed to you. So I commend him for that, and I hope that outside those doors nobody condemns him for that. I applaud him, actually. I respectfully disagree with the points that he's made, but I don't think you'll find any more virtuous person in this world than School Board Member Andy Lacey. I'd like to add a couple more things. I know we might be beating a dead horse, but the point of this resolution is to drive home this point to our legislature to know that how we feel about things. I actually attended private school, and I can tell you firsthand, there's basically 3 types of families that you'll find at a private school, especially a faith-based private school, which is what I attended. You find families who it's very important for them, for their student to have a faith-based education. Then there's a second group of kids, the families are not happy with the schools that their student would have been zoned for. I would have been zoned for Glencliff or Antioch. And in the 90s, those are some rough schools, and I'm admittedly a cream puff, so that wouldn't have worked out too well. And then the third group of kids that I witnessed firsthand were students who either got expelled from public schools, had some behavioral issues, maybe even had learning disabilities. And the private school that I attended, at least, didn't have any type of approach to deal with those concerns directly. So that same student who came to our private school was only there sometimes less than a year, sometimes a year or two, and ultimately they left because their academia did not improve. Private schools are not a magic wand. It's not a magic bullet. The reason that they succeed, once again, is because they have a concentrated group of students who are already being supported in academia. I don't ever like to criticize something without offering my own solution, so I'm going to do that right now if our legislature is listening. I would like to see one of 2 things. When we're talking about school choice, I would love school choice. I would love for there to be space in every school in Sumner County, that if transportation is negated, transportation is not an issue, that if a parent thought that one school offered a scenario that was better for their students than the one they were zoned for whatever reason, maybe it was a fine arts program, maybe it's a CTE program that's not offered at their school, that they'd be able to transfer. We can't do that right now because we really don't have the space, and as we're going to be discussing in May, we don't have the faculty to support that right now. And so I would like, number one, for years I've had, I've heard people talk about asking for impact fees so that the new construction, which creates the growth in our schools and causes our census to rise and causes the need for more space and causes the need for more faculty, maybe we could work something out where we could generate some extra revenue there. But I think the underlying issue with, with the voucher plan is I think that there's an acknowledgement that post-COVID we have seen some drops in achievement. We've seen drops in reading scores. That's why we're being bombarded with the 3rd and 4th grade retention laws. And you know, an unfortunate thing about government is government often paints things with a broad stroke to fix a surgical problem. And this is what I think this is. And so I agree with Ms. Hayes. I think we're having some budget shortfalls that nobody's really talking about out loud. But if by some chance we do have just an extra $300 million laying around, I'd like to see our legislature, instead of diverting money to private institutions, I'd like to see them offer more resources for our students who are struggling. More tutoring, more behavioral analysts in our schools. I was told today that we have a school that the reading interventionist basically has to act as a pseudo behavioral analyst because the elementary students in that school have, you know, so many behavioral issues, from meltdowns to anxiety to things that are real big distractions in the classroom. And so if we do have that extra $300 million laying around, I can think of a host of things that we can provide to our public schools, you know, to help these kids who are struggling. So my solutions are twofold. Figure out ways for us to be able to expand our facilities and hire adequate staff and retain adequate staff, and then also use a more surgical approach to offer resources, not requirements, not 3rd, 4th grade retention. Those are requirements. I'm not a big fan of those, but resources, opportunities for our students. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Mr. Wise?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, the state's funding over the last 10 years for public education has grown. But my goodness, how much has the state population grown? If the chairman will permit, I'd like to ask Dr. Langford a few questions, if I may.
Proceed.
Dr. Langford, as far as you know, must private schools admit special ed students?
No, sir, only if there are private schools set up just for special ed students. There are a few of those, but not many. But no, private schools do not have to. Private schools control who they choose or who they
Do they have to admit English language learners?
No, sir.
Is a student required to take an entrance exam at a private school?
That's determined by the private school.
Thank you, sir. Are private schools required to follow the federal meal requirements? In other words, 2 hot dogs a day per student, that kind of stuff?
No, sir.
That's just kidding me.
No, sir.
They do not? Are private school students required to take mandated tests?
No, sir.
Do private schools have to adhere to at-level reading, i.e. 3rd or 4th grade and or 4th grade retention?
No, sir.
Sounds to me like that we have a lot stiffer, in the public school system, we have a lot stiffer requirements. And I'm glad that we do, quite frankly, but I just don't see where your and my and all of us tax dollars are going to help fund private education. That really gets me. That really burns me. Yes, I'm for parental choice, absolutely, absolutely. In White House, for example, a parent has a choice to send their 3rd grader to H.B. Williams Elementary School, or they can send them across the highway into Robeson County to Christian Community School. I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with that. But don't take my tax dollars over to Christian Community School. I like Christian Community School, but I don't want my tax dollars funding them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wise. Mr. Daniels?
Yeah, I was just kind of thinking about the other comments that were made, and you know, there's a big debate right now about student loan forgiveness. It's been going on for the last 3 or 4 years, and you know, a lot of the talk that we hear about student loan forgiveness is, again, you know, it's not fair for taxpayers to be paying, you know, off someone else's debt. You know, despite the fact that in some of the cases people are paying, you know, now more than they did when they took out that loan. whole different conversation, but it seems like we're almost moving from, being against student loan forgiveness to supporting student loan funding. Because that's what we're doing. We're funding the private schools and the students' ability to go to those. And so as I think about this, and I think about where our state's trying to move to with this voucher program, and I appreciate Mr. Graham making some comments about what he'd like to see in the bill. And there are some things that I think should be in the bill if they're going to pass this thing. Number one, same testing standards. If we're going to compare everyone evenly, then let's hold them to the same standards that everyone else has to follow, right? Number two, I would like to see if it's someone, if they think it's so valuable to move students into these private institutions, then I think that any institution that raises their tuition level, because now they're getting an additional funding, student loan funding, right? Any additional raise in tuition ought to go back to the public schools. Number three, I think they should put a freeze on any student that's currently in a private school receiving any funding for at least 5 years. If we're really trying to get the money to the kids that actually need it, and that's the point of this, then I don't know why those wouldn't be points of discussion that they'd want to consider. Because again, right now, it seems like the students that have made the choice to go to the private schools already are the ones that are going to benefit more than the ones that might like to. Because again, a lot of those students, there's 480 students that we're talking about that Mr. Lancaster mentioned a little bit ago. Many of those 480 students can't drive from Westmoreland to Hendersonville. They've got working parents. They don't have the financial ability. They don't have parents that have the time to be able to do that. Those students that are in these private institutions, those are the ones that do have the ability to support their students. And like Mr. Graham said, that's one of the reasons, parental involvement, that's one of the keys to student success, right? And so maybe if the state put more money towards parent involvement, making sure that students had the resources and access they needed to that same level of support, maybe that would make a difference as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Daniels. Mr. Lancaster?
Real quick, you wouldn't get a bunch of vegetarians to judge a barbecue cooking contest. And the reason I say that is we're all up here, most of us I'll straight up admit I'm biased towards public schools. My kids go to public schools. I went to public schools. I volunteered in public schools before I took on or ran for this office. So yes, this is not, you're not getting, so what I'm trying to say is I understand where there be some people that support this, but I come at it from a different perspective. I have worked to raise money in my kids' school. I have gone into different schools and I've listened to teachers and what they're needing, and what they're, as much as I appreciate what the state has done over the past few years, what the county does, everything else, we're not sitting around just flush with extra money looking around like, what are we going to do with this? So that you're very protective of what you got. And when something comes along that potentially risks that, then back of my hair stands up and I'm kind of getting ready to somewhat fight over it. But at the end of the day, if this passes or if it doesn't pass, it's not going to be the end all of Sumner County schools. Sumner County schools will be as excellent as the people of Sumner County want them to be. And that's why they're as good as they are now, and that's why they'll continue to be as good as they will be in the future. But at the same time, back of my hair kind of stands up on this one, and I have concerns. And it's not that I'm against vouchers as much as it is, you're asking me to support this, and I just can't get there. And again, 100% biased and freely admit that. So thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Lancaster. Mr. Lacy?
Yeah, and I would just like to say again, my kids have thrived in Sumner County schools. Both of my daughters have done exceptionally well. They will stay in Sumner County schools. like I said, I know District 11 schools better than any other schools in Sumner County, and we've got some top-notch schools in Sumner County. I've even had one person reference one of our schools in District 11 is almost like a private school that's ran so well. And so I 100% support our schools. I support our students, all of our employees, but I also support a parent's right to choose where they send their kid to school. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lady. Ms. Hawkins? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Ms. Hawkins?
I support the parents' right to choose where their students go to school. And they have that right now. What this is about is not about choice. This is about money. And if you can't see that, then you've got dollar signs blocking your vision. Thank you.
Ms. Hawkins? Ms. Hayes?
Yes, Chairman Brewer, thank you. Some information I had received, and we all may have received this. There were reviews of, excuse me, I'm not speaking into them. There were reviews of 4 systems that opened themselves up to a review of their voucher programs. Indiana, Louisville, Ohio, and Washington, D.C. They actually allowed full independent review of their voucher programs. And they showed negative results for the students. So the data that they received on their test scores, on their achievement, were more negative than they were before they had this voucher system. 40 other counties in this state have prepared a resolution against vouchers. And comparable districts, and correct me, those are like us, Williamson County, Rutherford, Wilson, have all opposed vouchers with resolutions. I would like to see this board join with them to make a statement. As has been said, I'm in a protective measure, being that we are a governing body over the Sumner County public school system. The numbers don't add up. Not a promise of data that's going to follow these students. Like we have to jump all these hurdles. There's too many loose ends. And like I said, not the sharpest knife in the drawer. I don't understand it all. But if you can't explain something to me in simple terms, when my husband and I were looking for in investments or listening to our financial planner, investments. And so Jonathan maybe is trying to, he has visited with our investor. He's trying to explain something to me. If he can't explain to me in simple terms and I just get it and I understand it, then this might not be a good investment. This is just too convoluted. And we're not even sure exactly what we're talking about. They will probably do something if this ever gets to the point of a vote. This week, then they attach a fiscal note with it. So we got 2 weeks, I think, left in this session. I ask that we join with the counties in this state in this resolution against vouchers.
Thank you, Sage. All in, all done. I have some very, very good debate tonight. Very civil debate, very, very good. I commend the board for that. I have some very personal reasons that I don't care to elaborate on, but I will be abstaining from the vote tonight. With that being said, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No. 1 no, the rest are yes, 1 abstention. So motion carries. And that will end the special call meeting. So we are adjourned on that. Would y'all like to take a 5-minute recess? 5-minute recess, and then we'll be back for the person.
It's more realistic.
Well, I got Did you? I had to win it all, but I expected to only one.
We were afraid to watch it at all, and we hadn't watched softball at all. We were winning, but we didn't want to jinx it. We thought if we watched it, we'd jinx it. So we didn't watch any of it. more years.
Yeah. So, I don't know, I don't. People tear you down out there. That's so terrible. How can they handle the pressure of it coming at you? 145 days? 70? Have to have a police
We usually have it, and we've had yeah, we wasn't expecting anything bad, but if we got something controversial, we just have to.
Thank y'all. I gotta go home.
All right, have a good evening.
Thanks for listening. It's phenomenal. I'll reach out to the good ones. Thank y'all. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
See ya.
All right, let's call the meeting back to order, please. Everybody get back to their seats and we'll be ready to go. The study session is now in session. Called it to order. Roll call's been made that we don't need for tonight. So, all right, first item on the agenda is District Capital Project Workshop. Dr. Langford.
Thank you, Mr. Brewer. First off, before we get into capital, let me give first off, I want to praise our school leaders and teams and attendance officers and front office staff and bus drivers and everybody, because our weather day last week and eclipse day yesterday, the front office staff did yeoman's work to get everything done. I'm slightly dubious that the number of high school kids absent all watched the eclipse, but I'm hopeful that they watched it on TV or their iPads or something and learned a lot from NASA and things like that. I'm somewhat dubious, but hopefully we're through those interruptions. Of course, it is spring, and we will have more severe weather. I did want to share, as before I jump into capital, just a moment of discretion. The thought process that we put into severe weather is different, obviously, than snow. We have to weigh out the fact that a significant number of our student population is safer in a school building than they are in their home, especially if they're unsupervised from work, when their parents are at work. And that's something that we take very seriously when we make the call. It's a tough call. We have to also weigh out when our kids are going to be on the road. We have not much time of a window during the day where we don't have kids moving. Our elementary schools start at 7:15. So we have starting times between 7:15 and 8:45. We have dismissal times between 2:15 and 3:45. So it's a very tight window. Every diabetic student we need to eat and have time to see the nurse before we put them back out on the road. We have a significant number of students with health needs that we need to check on. Kids that get their medicine at school and things like that. So it's a huge undertaking to call school off early. And if you see, one of the counties dismissed 4 hours early, and they dismissed right out into one of the waves of the storm. So it's a tough call. We'll try to give you all a heads up on that whenever we can. But that's a little bit like we consult with Mr. Widener. He actually has someone from National Weather Service that he consults with, and then another meteorologist. So we put a lot of thought into it. I also want to say, because I saw this on Facebook a little bit, is we 100% support parents' choices to make the best decision for their kids. If a parent wants to keep their child at home, we're all for it. We'll work to make sure whatever attendance thing needs to get worked out. We always do a pretty good job. I think our schools do it, working that out case by case. Also wanted one other point before I get rolling on capital. I wanted to give a shout out to our county commission. We had last Monday night. It passed unanimously in the education committee for the rental bleachers. It passed last night in budget unanimously. So I'm thankful and appreciative for that. And it'll be up at the county commission on Monday night. And I've heard from Mr. Harrison that we think the bleachers may even go in a little bit earlier. We hope. We hope. So that's where we are. And I'll give you an athletic capital update probably next month. But I wanted to go through our other capital projects. So these are projects that are completed. We'll look at it in 3 ways: completed, in progress, coming up the remainder of this budget year, and then looking out a little bit to the future. Okay, so district projects. These are ones that you can't, slate out to individual schools because they affected the whole district. We purchased 12 school buses this year. We try to stay around that number every year because we want obviously the safest buses, but we also don't want to get behind where we have a year that we got about 15 or 18. We're in really good shape as a fleet now. We've got the opportunity, just to let you know, we've got the opportunity to buy fewer this year because we're in such a great place without it hurting us down the road. We will have to buy some school buses, but we're probably not looking in that 12 to 15 range this year. Mr. Crasty and his team have done a great job of managing our fleet. Safety initiatives. I think what Ms. Katie Brown and I talked, I would like to do a study session sometime where we can close the doors like we've done before and get caught up on all the safety stuff, but I hated to do that tonight because we got so much other capital stuff. So with your, we also don't know how much money we're going to get yet out of the budget for safety. There will be more money allocated, and I thought it'd be better if we could kind of roll all that together and give you an update on where we are. Obviously, we're learning a great deal as these safety projects are initiated. We've learned that the badges where principals and assistant principals can call, they work really well. They are very sensitive, and they get an immediate response from law enforcement. When we've had a couple of mistakes, misfires, and within 3 minutes we've had police response at the school. When you think about school at Covenant last year, it was 6 minutes before Metro got there. Our average response time has been about 3 minutes, so it's pretty remarkable for our law enforcement. Our Ranger Polarises are in and distributed to the school, and I'm an English teacher, and it's a random apostrophe. That should not be there. I'll try to fix that before it goes out to the public, so please forgive me for that. But our Ranger Polarises are in, and our trainers are using them. And then we're going to upgrade, this is just recently bid, we're going to upgrade the sound and audio visual in the gym. We use that, that's our large training center. We can train up to 250, 300 people in there, and we use it a lot. And other civic organizations also use it. We do the drug court graduation, things like that. It was not equipped. It has Chris Brown and his team have done a great job nursing us through, but it was not equipped with sound and audio visual equipment for the purposes that we're using it for, and it needs some work, so we added that to our list. And then, of course, the iPads that we purchased in the fall. I thought the best way was to look at it by school cluster. And so going through Beach, we've done, and again, these are projects that Mr. Brown, some of the larger projects are ones Mr. Brown's had on his list for a while where we were playing catch up, especially on HVAC. We'll go in, the ones that are being cut loose are ones that came off our principals list. So, and some of these were on our principals list too. But HVAC at Madison Creek, gutter replacement at Madison Creek, the Beach Annex HVAC replacement, and Beach Elementary whiteboards will go in this summer. They had old shower boards that we've had around for a while, and so those desperately needed to be replaced. Gallatin High School, the stadium fence was an early addition to this budget year before football season. The small gym HVAC, they use that gym for a whole bunch of purposes at Gallatin High School, from testing and everything else. They've wanted air conditioning for a long time. Mr. Brown and his team figured out how to do it, and we've got that in place now, or in progress. The auditorium HVAC, had a chance to see a great play Friday night. The Drowsy Chaperone was great. Gallatin kids are so talented. It's great to see the theater with proper HVAC. And then the Rucker Stewart LED lights. If you haven't been to Rucker Stewart, the LED lights make a huge difference. This will be one, I don't have it on the long term tonight because we focused on paving, roofing, and HVAC. But this will be one, like it cost about $168,000 to do Rucker, a little bit more than that to do Station Camp High School. So we'll try to start rotating those through. They save us a lot of money on energy. We don't have to replace bulbs and ballasts all the time. And they make it's really, the two things you get the most compliments on in the school are when you replace with LED lights and when you paint. It really helps the aesthetics of our school. Okay, let's see, Hendersonville. Many of you were there when we cut the ribbon for the new science labs. So we had a significant number of science lab upgrades along with new library furniture at Ellis, art furniture at Hawkins, and HVAC controls at Nanny Berry. Nanny Berry had an older system. This allows more centralized control and quicker responses for Andy and his team if there's an HVAC need at Nanny Berry. Liberty Creek, obviously not a huge amount of capital need at Liberty Creek, I almost put the sewer on there just for fun. But the sewer is still working. We're thankful. But we've already ordered the school zone lights. Chris, I'm not sure if they've come in yet, but they should be close. The process on that is now that the top coat's been applied, we can, and the plat was recorded by the Planning Commission, we can ask the Highway Department to take that as a, to request the commission to approve that as a public road, and then we'll be able to put speed limit signs, blinking lights, things like that there, and it'll help tremendously. I don't know if you've ever known this or not, but teenagers like to drive fast, and they like straight stretches of road. We want to make sure that gets taken care of.
Dr. Langford, in addition to the speed lights, will there be any type of like speed bumps or anything like that as well to help slow them down? Because yes,
yeah, I think let's start with the traffic lights. We can put speed bumps are relatively easy to put out, but you know, we try not to put those on. I'll have to check to see with Mr. Ellis to see if that's something we can do on a public road. We can do it in parking lots and things like that. We'll have to check on I'm trying to think if I've ever driven on a public road that has a speed bump.
I do know I was recently in Nashville, and it was a area where obviously it was a cut through a neighborhood,
Yeah.
And they did have speed hump, and actually over by Gallatin High School, there's some as well
Okay.
between the apartments. Well, I guess it's actually between Rucker. That's what it is.
Yeah, if it's possible, I'm all in favor
So
of
I
doing
think,
it.
like you said, they're already going fast, and you know, with
Yeah.
the timing when the middle school comes out and stuff like that, I have a feeling that
I think,
and maybe not many, just strategic.
yeah, I
but
think some of it will get better when we have the middle school open and you're not dumping all those people into the high school complex at the same time.
No, I was just gonna mention, I don't know if the road that runs by Schaefer is a county road or not, but I know they just put speed bumps out there.
Yeah.
Not that they've slowed anybody down, believe me. I can tell, but they are out there.
Some of the ones Andy Brown used to put out would knock your eye teeth out if you hit them.
Yeah.
So they would absolutely work. But I don't know, we have to see if that'd be something that we'd have to do or the highway department would have to
I'm
do.
just waiting for dirt bikes out there, because I think cars are trying to get a little air going over them as opposed to slowing down, but
Yeah.
it's just me.
Yeah.
Ms. Daniels, Ms. Hayes?
Yes, thank you, Trevor. The road that runs beside Indian Lake Elementary, when they opened that up for walkers and people were lining up to
Yeah.
park there, that's a city road that goes back into that neighborhood, correct?
Okay. I think so.
There are speed bumps
Okay.
that were put in there.
Good. I stand corrected.
But now that's a city road. But
Yeah.
I think so.
Well, we're gonna get some speed bumps if we have to do it first. Maybe we put the speed bumps down before we turn it over to the county.
Mr. Lancaster?
I was just gonna say, you were right. Spike strips will work too.
Mr. Lancaster, the one thing that I hear quite frequently is that I'm wrong. Don't worry about it. As you can tell by my staff's response. All right, Portland High School. The talk of the town was when we put the new roof on Portland, because they unloaded like about $500,000 worth of roofing materials. And these new roofs are wild because it's not styrofoam, but it looks like styrofoam, and it floats on it. And everybody was captivated by watching that go up. It's not styrofoam, but it's a rubber material, and it looks, when it's packaged, a little bit like styrofoam. Yeah. No, the roof doesn't float, but it's, I'm not doing a good job, but this is why I shouldn't do capital. But remember, I was an English teacher. But basically you didn't have to strip and replace the entire roof. They could use the existing roof and then cover it. And it's, it's what's preferred now on a structure. It was an odd choice of roofing materials originally when Portland High School was chosen, or was built, and it had a lot of issues. And this has addressed most of them. We were able to do a little paving at White Hardison this year, and then an awning for Portland West. We've got a very small project that we're going to go back to Portland West and do. It's not going to count as capital. Andy's going to do it out of maintenance, but basically there's a small section in the back of Portland West where students in wheelchairs with special needs are loaded into cars, and they've never had an awning, and they just requested it, and it's like 6 feet of awning. So we're going to get that taken care of, because it'll just make it a lot better for dismissal there. Station Camp, we've done a lot of work this year. The LED lights, The LED lights make a huge difference in Station Camp High School. We were there for the ROTC presentation, and you walk in, it's really like a different school. You'll see later, I've got a thing about painting, and you'll see that once you turn on LED lights, you have to paint the school because it really it shows every blemish. With the Station Camp gym roof, Station Camp hallway floors, remember we did a section over Christmas and the rest will be done once school's out this summer. We partnered with them on the soccer building, and then the gym floor is out for bid, Chris, right now? Or
in the process of being installed.
Been in the process of being installed. And then the Jack Anderson Elementary School chilling tower is blowing cold air. So that was a really fast. I'm really thankful because, you know, I was worried when it first went out because we've had times over the last couple of years where a chilling tower was 6 to 9 months to get. And thankful that Jack Anderson got it turned around in about 3 or 4 weeks. So kudos to the team that put that in. White House, the Burr building, which is the white building behind the gym, it's used as for strength and conditioning classes throughout the day. You know, the whole time I was there, we just said, turn on the fans and get tougher. But we also left all the doors rolled up to the outside to let natural air come in. Now with safety, we can't leave all those doors open to get air circulating in there, so we're able to air condition that. White House High School Annex HVAC, and then HB Williams furniture upgrade. We made the decision to do this because HB Williams is changing from a K5 or K4 school to a K2 school. So a significant amount of the furniture, all the furniture was original to the building when it was opened, but it was also set, a lot of it was set for, you know, third and fourth graders, larger kids. So we're going to update the furniture. The furniture that's usable, Jamie York does a tremendous job of taking that furniture and redistributing it out around the county. So we won't like lose that furniture, but it will be good to kind of help HB Williams have, you know, the appropriate sized furniture for kids. It makes a huge difference. You realize if you're my size, you realize that when you walk into a kindergarten classroom, they need really little desks and chairs. I can never sit down in a kindergarten classroom unless I just hit the floor. All right, Westmoreland Middle, we were able to replace the chilling tower. And that was, I know Mayor Leith was very appreciative of that. His daughter teaches, I think, 8th grade. And her hallway was about, he called me, I think, during the start of school, and it was like 83 degrees in her hallway. So it should be significantly cooler. I hope it's about 57 when we roll through there this year. All right, so that's what we've approved. It's either in progress or close to being done right now. This is what we've recently approved or is in progress right now. So some flooring projects that you'll see over the next couple months. A lot of these will take place in the summer, obviously, because you can't do flooring while you have kids in the building. So Beach Elementary, Ellis Middle School, Guild, Howard Elementary, Indian Lake, Westmoreland Middle will get new flooring. It may not be the whole school. Some places it'll be the whole school, other places it'll be a hallway. Sometimes we catch those a hall at a time and we'll rotate around. It's a significant undertaking to replace all this VCT tile. Sometimes we have to when we do the VCT tile, depending on the age of the school. Like for instance, we did at White House during the renovation. Every bit of the tile had asbestos glue adhesive. So we had to abate the asbestos before you replaced the tile. So sometimes that's a part, especially in our older schools like Howard, where you have to address the asbestos glue. Sometimes if you're not doing, you were able to just cover it and roll on, but sometimes if it requires asbestos abatement, it's a lot more expensive. HVAC projects. I just want to we approved this one. I want to give you, if you remember back a couple months ago, we were talking about the comptroller's change in interpretation of construction materials versus construction. This is a project that we would have been able to have bid and gotten done for $338,767. We will now have to bid this, and it'll cost substantially more because we'll have to pay for the engineering services for it. But this is just to give you an idea of what HVAC costs. This is the HVAC unit for the kindergarten pod at Indian Lake Elementary. Andy said this is one of the most needed projects in the county for HVAC. We're playing a little catch up on HVAC. It's going to take a while to catch up. We've just got to keep knocking them out as we can. Signage projects. I don't have all the signage projects on here I would like to get. This may just be director opinion. I hate Cedar Shake signs. I would like to remove all the Cedar Shake signs in the county. They look good somewhere around 2,000. They don't match the beauty of our schools and the grounds and everything, but I've reluctantly accepted that I'm not gonna be able to get them all at once. We're gonna have to knock them out a couple at a time. I love, like, I think Howard's sign is really, I think it captures what's going on at Howard. It's attractive, it's not over the top. But so we're gonna help Ellis, Ellis used their money to replace the sign. They've got an LED sign on the front. This is not anything with that. In the back of Ellis is used for a number of different things. The gym entrance, you've got a one-to-one clinic on the side. This is signage to help people to know where to go. Obviously, people come into the one-to-one clinic, we want them to know to not try to go through the back door of the school, but to go to the one-to-one clinic, and then helping fans and everything when they're coming in the back to go in that door. Hawkins Middle School, we're trying to figure out, like, this run, so Homeland Security identified that Hawkins Middle School, we don't own the property next to the entrance on the main road. So we have a sign that we put in that yard somewhere, I would say about 1975. I'm not sure the neighbors appreciate or like that sign. I don't know what we do, because we gotta have some kind of signage to the school. We're gonna try to work to get a road sign that just says Hawkins Middle School with an arrow on it. What we do wanna do is put a sign on the school campus, because the signage, it's hard to know. If you've ever been to Hawkins, it's hard to know exactly where to go. So we want to spend some money to update. Andy's team has done a lot of work to update Hawkins. It's one of our older middle schools, and we want to make sure that the signage just helps people know exactly where to go. Schaefer Middle School needs they need a couple new signs. They've got one of those Cedar Shake. This is not the Cedar Shake, but there's a larger sign that they need to replace. They would like an LED. So what we're going to do is give them some money towards that, and then they have some money. But it's not, we're not paying for the full LED sign replacement, but for part of it. All right, and then furniture. We mentioned we've already put in an order for HP, or we're in the process of ordering HP Williams. Venus Stewart also needs to rotate out some furniture. We've rotated some out each year, but this will be great for Venus Stewart to catch them and rotate out and help continue to update their furniture. It's just a thing that we need to stay on top of, to constantly rotate furniture. Like when I went back to White House High School as a teacher in 2009, I was in the same classroom that I was in as a student, with the same desks, the same Channel 1 television, everything basically the same as when I was a student, and it was still that way when I came back as principal in 2014.
Is this furniture for Venus Stewart? Is it for the entire school, or is it for specific grades?
It's specific grades. I think it's K1.
Okay.
I think, Chris, do you remember? K1. I'm pretty sure it's K1, but I can check with Ms. York and find out. Okay, I want to be clear for Ms. Brown's sake, Ms. Amanda Brown's sake. Painting is not capital. Okay? Mr. Brown, Andy Brown saves money throughout the year to try to get as much painting done in the summer as we can, because painting is one of the things we get requested from schools the most, because obviously painting looks great until you turn kids loose in the school. It's going to always have to be done. And when it's done uniformly, it really contributes to the school's appearance, but also the school's culture. And we've got some amazingly well-painted schools. If we could clone Lance Taylor, Union has lost square footage. Union used to be 25 square feet larger before Lance went there to be principal. We've lost it due to paint. But not everybody paints like Lance. I think Lance would think that was funny, I hope. But these are the schools that, and again, sometimes this will be a hallway, sometimes it'll be the entire school. This is what's come to us from principals. Sometimes it's bathrooms, and some of this will include not just painting, but also putting down the, Jeremy, what's it called on the bathroom floors? Epoxy on the floors. Epoxy on bathroom floors in elementary and middle schools is significantly better than VCT tile. I will explain that to you after the meeting, why that's important in elementary and middle schools, but if you need me to. Yeah. Actually, I'll get Andy to explain to you. Andy Brown loves to explain the way our sewers work, so he would be happy to.
It'll be illustrated too. So
He will send you For some reason, it's important to have HD cameras to look for sewer problems. I don't know why you need that in high def, but evidently you do. So here are our summer painting projects. Bethpage Elementary, Clyde Riggs, Knox Doss, Lakeside Park, Millersville, Nannyberry, Rucker Stewart, Schaefer, Station Camp High School, Station Camp Middle, White Hardison, Westmoreland Elementary, and White House Middle School. So these are all the capital dollars except for the painting that we put into place this year. That does not capture, like I didn't detail out all the different security projects, obviously, but we've talked about those before. And there will probably be some others that will pop up that we'll be able to knock out. But we're really close. We're down to, Ms. Brown, I think about $450,000 of the money that we allocated for capital this year that we haven't put back into schools. So I think I want to commend Ms. Brown and Mr. Harrison and Andy Brown and all the different teams that have worked on this, because this is a significant amount of capital projects to roll in a year. And with with product disruptions and everything else, supply chain issues, they've done an amazing job of getting capital projects. And our schools have really benefited. You see it when you're out.
Mr. Lancaster.
Going back to the security stuff, the stuff that we have, the security upgrades at all the schools that we approved or bid on and approved, are we still on track there to, I thought that was supposed to be done by the end of this school year, or maybe the end of summer.
Let me say, out in the public, let me say this, we're learning a lot and we're moving as fast as we can. It's definitely a growth process.
That's the issue we probably, I don't know about we, but I get asked the most often about security. Where we stand on that?
Yeah, I'd prefer to do that behind doors.
Okay.
I hate to say, we've done these schools, but not these.
No, I didn't mean to ask that. I just meant, are we still on track, I guess, for the plan? I think was the plan originally, I want to say was to the end of summer. Or?
I don't know that we'll have everything done by the end of summer.
Okay.
That's going to be, everybody in the state of Tennessee is doing the same security projects at the same time. And that's a concern. But I don't really want to say much more than that publicly.
That's fine.
Mr. Lancaster, Ms. Lacy.
Yeah, could we have a private safety meeting, kind of where we stand?
Yeah.
And I'm sure you would send us an email and let us know when those things are done.
Yeah. Yeah, yes, sir. And I think I'd like to see how much money we're getting from the state for next year, and then we can kind of wrap up, update where we are, and then say this is what we're looking. Ms. Katie Brown and her team have already, they never stop doing security visits and updates and upgrades. And I know they've been working on a lot of things that are like the next step beyond what we're doing in phase one. So while we're doing phase one, their team is doing tremendous work, but then also identifying what comes next. And some of the things are things that we've talked about and y'all have suggested that are going to come into fruition. But I'd like to share those, when we're in executive session.
We have one of those maybe next month.
If we can try to fit, I'll see if we can fit it in before budget. Yeah, we may have to do a special call to get that done, but let me talk to Miss Amanda Brown and Miss Katie Brown and see what we can get put together.
Mr. Lacy. Mr. Daniel.
Yeah, just on the list of schools, I know you mentioned Lance over at Union. Are there any other projects going on at Union?
Not capital projects right now that I know.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. There will be a lot of the things that get turned into us, that are real needs for principals, are maintenance needs. And Andy's team, they fill thousands of work orders a year. Some of the things that were on Union's list would require, for instance, if we're going to add a gym and we're going to add a wing, those will have to be probably something that we would put on a bond because they're going to be a couple $1 million.
Yeah, and I think that was the big thing in speaking with Lance is I know he's been asking for a gym for a number of years. So.
I would love to do it, but you're talking again Mr. Johnson reminded me this morning to speak into existence that our main capital projects next year are going to be called athletic facilities, plus what I'm going to show you in a minute that we'll have to continue to stay on top of for maintenance. And so at certain point, we're gonna have to try to do another run of bonds, but that's not like, even if we could do a bond right now, the interest rates are so high, it's not something that we would recommend to do now anyway, because interest rates are, you know, for instance, like we did most of the bond that we did for Liberty Creek and White House Intermediate, we did that under like 2.5%. Some of them were at 1.87%. Now that number, I haven't looked in a while, but that number would probably be like 6.5%. So it's just a different world for even considering doing a bond or something like that. So we're gonna have to, you know, we've got such a list of needs. We can put the Union Gym on that list, but to me, that's a project like if we're building another school at Gallatin, we can add that in as something that we do there to, you know, to do that. That's a little bit down the road.
Now would the vision behind that, not the gym, but the wing, be to increase head count?
That would be a future.
Okay.
That would be a future board decision. There would be a couple ways you could always look at that. That would be one way. Is do you want to expand the head count at Union? Yeah, you know, I think like we spent the first 3 or 4 years that we were back in Nashville or back in Middle Tennessee. We lived in Metro, and my girls went to Sylvan Park, and it was it was a magnet school, but then they had a local population base too. So like we got in because we were zoned there, but then once we moved to a different location, we could stay because it had the magnet component or the enhanced option. So, you know, I think like, you know, without going too far down the track of this, I think the next tier for school board in the future is to look at that choice component. I would encourage you, if you want to look at something that I think is really well done, Rutherford Choice. Rutherford County has really put something very thoughtful together that I think is a model for the state to look at ways that you can, we've got some serious questions we're gonna have to ask about, like how do we let kids, Mr. Graham referenced this earlier, how do we let kids participate in different CTE programs other than where they're zoned? Like your zip code shouldn't determine the access you have to programs around the county, because we're always gonna be limited by the blueprint of the building, so how do we open that up for other kids? You know, that's going to be a real, I think regardless of, you know, all the school choice debates and everything like that, I think what COVID has revealed is we need to make fundamental changes to high school. You know, we've been talking a lot about Sumner Ready, and one of the things there is how do we prepare kids for the next step, and that's going to be capital investments. You know, next year we're going to make some capital investments in science equipment for middle schools, because we're going to roll a new science curriculum. It's going to be heavy lab in middle school, which is wonderful. It's going to jumpstart and light a fire in kids to be excited about science, but it's going to require significant investment in lab equipment, because middle school labs right now are not. That's not going to be a 1 year, that's not going to be something we can fix 1 year. We're going to have some advantages because our kids have iPads, and we'll be able to help with some of it with those, but there's still nothing like, you know, I can remember, you know, when my plebe year, I was in a chemistry class and I was the only kid that had never actually touched chemicals. I had watched my teacher do experiments in the front of the class. Everybody else had done an experiment before. That did not bode well for me. It was tough. We want our kids to have those opportunities as early as possible. Yeah, so I think those are some of the things that we've got to really look into. They will have consequences on the capital side, because we'll have to think about how we adjust the blueprints of our buildings and how we make things more accessible. How do we address transportation needs? You know, for probably 2 decades, the Middle College building was a vocational school, and they bust kids in from White House, Westmoreland, and Portland. There were Portland High School is where Portland East is now, but kids from Westmoreland and White House came there for 2 periods in the morning or 2 periods in the afternoon, and they took, it was almost really the same model as Middle College. There are plans in the work, as we've talked here before, about possibly dramatically expanding that TCAP Portland. If they do that, I would love to expand the TCAP program to give more kids access with transportation to be able to take advantage of those programs. So we would probably have to add some school buses and things like that to be able to make those more possible. Those are some things for a little bit farther, a little bit outside the scope of what we're looking at tonight, but very much on the horizon. Okay. Okay, future capital needs. Right, I know we've talked a lot about 3, 5, 10-year plans. I can tell you with athletic facilities, what we have on the books now, and some of these projects, I asked Mr. Brown to send me a list. We have more HVAC needs than this, but these are the most immediate and the ones that we're going to have to address shorter term, like in the next 1 to 2 years. There are some others, you know, like Indian Lake, we're going to try to get the kindergarten pod done now, but there are others that need to be done in the relative, like the 1 to 3 year time span.
Yeah, quick question about the HVAC. I know several of the schools that are listed are schools that we had before when we did renovations and remodels to them. So is it the full school, or did we address any of the HVAC when we did those remodels?
Most of the renovations, when we added a wing, like that wing would have had, so like Gene Brown, the new part would have HVAC. You're talking about a different part. These aren't full school.
Okay.
Remember, I think the hard thing that's, I mean, I'll be honest, like when I first started at the central office, I thought you had like 1 or 2 massive air conditioning units for the entire building. Like what we found, like with Beach Annex and White House Annex, is there are 100-something units, you know, that connect into it. Like we've got a bunch of different types. I mean, we've got some geothermal units, like at Portland High School. We've got chilling towers. We've got different, you know, there's a whole bunch of different types of HVAC units.
But when we're looking at these specific schools, it's not necessarily for the whole school. It could be
Right.
just like
Right.
a particular specific area of that school, or
My
maybe
guess is some like Hawkins, you're gonna have, it's gonna be more extensive.
maybe ones that are older than the others. Or so
Indian
forth.
Lake, for instance, because Indian Lake has not had a renovation, Indian Lakes is pretty extensive, where Howard and Gene Brown is one part. Okay, paving projects. This is a new feature for us, because in the past we've been able to partner with the highway department, and we got the work done pretty much just for the cost of the asphalt. Our cost to pave is going to go up quite a bit, but it's not. I want to be clear. It's not something where Mr. Ellis has come in and said he's not. He's been extraordinarily helpful and helped us, like on Merrill Hyde. He probably helped us save $150,000 to $200,000 because his team went out and sketched out exactly what we needed to do on the bid. And they were extraordinarily helpful in that process. But he's gotten more money from the governor and more money from the commission, and we're so far behind on paving in the county, he's got to have his guys out. And he's lost a large number of his crew over the last couple months, so he's limited in what he can do. He's got to have them out every day paving roads in the county. So it's not anything. If Toby could help, Toby else could help us, he would do anything in the world to help us. So if you know Toby, that's just the way he is. But so I want to be clear, this is not anything where the highway department has changed policy. It's just they've got a lot of work to do. And these are the, Mr. Brown's indicated, these are the top paving projects that we have right now. Between Beach Elementary and BHS, between Beach Elementary and T.W. Hunter, if you've ridden through there, you know exactly what we're talking about. Ellis Middle School, Gene Brown, Nanny Berry. And again, Ms. Andrews, to your point, these aren't all the time the whole parking lot. Sometimes it's different sections. And Portland West Middle School, I did not put it on here, but at some point we're going to have to bite the bullet and do the central office parking lot front and back. It's bad.
I think I'm parked underground right now.
Yeah, it's our new underground garage. Yeah, you can stack 2 or 3 cars in there. It's harder getting out than getting in.
Mr. Lancaster?
First of all, yes, between, I just want to make sure that what is between BES, because it's somebody that, you know, I know how bad Merrill Heights was before we got it repaired. I drove in it a couple of times. Beach Elementary's parking lot is right there with them now. Had a parent reach out a few weeks back and said, hey, there's a huge chunk of asphalt just sitting in the parking lot. And I just happened to be there at that time and went over there and like moved this massive chunk of asphalt out of the driveway there, or the parking lot there. But is the plan to actually pave the parking lot at Beach Elementary?
I know I need to talk to Mr. Brown, probably, because you know the thing is like when you get the asphalt crews out there, there's a big cost in just getting them there.
Right.
So the volume is, I mean, I think, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, what we're bidding is linear foot for paving?
So I would love to have done that.
Okay,
Paving contractors do not want to do that.
okay,
I talked to Rogers Group in particular who did Maryland Magnet, and he was not interested. They want to do it on a per project basis.
Yeah,
Because each project has its own unique circumstances.
we were hoping, because like we've got a bid for fencing, for instance. Like, we just pay by the foot. And so it doesn't matter where we put it, we've got a contract, and so we can say we need 25 or 100 or 300 feet of fencing, and they'll go out and do it. We've got a bid, and it just makes it a lot easier to manage. We were hoping we could get that for paving, but, you know, and I'm sure that's because paving is different, because you gotta look at what's underneath and how much work it needs and everything else.
So we just don't know right now. Is that the answer I'm hearing?
I think what we gotta do is look and see how much money
Okay.
we can put in our budget. So I'll be able to tell you more next month, because I think what we'll do is try to allocate a certain amount for paving and then prioritize projects.
Yeah. When we do these do we always, I guess, do we always contract with a third party vendor, or do we, I know you said we get Toby's group to do it.
We used to be able to do that.
But going forward, is it looking like we're always gonna have to contract out?
I think so.
I guess, does any district do it themselves, or is that ever a possibility?
We do a lot ourselves. Like, we can, Andy's team can fill in potholes. They can fix small jobs. They can't do like an entire school facility. Like, they couldn't do Beach Elementary, but if there's a pothole or two, they can come out and fix that.
They can patch.
They can patch.
Right.
But in terms of replacement,
I just didn't know, like, and this is just a, like, hypothetical or
Yeah.
whatever. You know, if we get 53 schools and the way you've done it in the past might not work, have we ever looked at the number on, like, what would it be? Is that something that we can even look at and say,
I'll
hey,
get Mr. Brown to look at it. I think what we would probably find is the same thing that Mr. Ellis is finding, is that the private sector is paying so much right now for people to pave. I mean,
so it's not just the equipment, we actually having the people
the
that do it.
equipment would probably be the easiest thing for us to getting the experience of the people to do it would be another. I can get Mr. Brown to look into it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not.
I'll ask him to look into it and see what it would cost.
I just, I don't know.
I mean, I'll be honest.
We're sitting there like saying, well, hey, every year we're going to have to contract out with a private company, $2 to $3 million.
He hasn't. Mr. Brown's team hasn't been able to repair as many of our potholes now as he would like, because we're so low on the priority list to get asphalt, because it goes like TDOT, then steps down. So like, what's going to happen is there's going to be one day where they say Sumner County can get asphalt, and Andy's guys are going there and get all the asphalt they can and fix every pothole they can, and do every repair they can. But since our winter storm, I mean, you see it if you're out on the interstate. There's still big stretches of the interstate where it's rough.
I mean, if we were a county that had, 10 schools, I'd say, well, this is,
right,
a stupid idea. But I'm just like,
no,
well,
I mean,
we got so many schools now that
we
makes
did
me
that.
wonder.
We did that with mowing, because we tried bidding out mowing, and it was a terrible experience. And then we ended up, it was way more effective for us to just get our own mowing equipment and mowers, and then when they're not mowing, Andy's able to take them and switch them off to painting and other light maintenance, and it's been a huge benefit for our school system. But I think it's definitely worth us researching. I'll ask him to put some numbers together for us.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Lacy?
Thank you, Chair. Dr. Langford, do we do preventive maintenance on our driveways or pavement, asphalt?
I mean, in a sense, like if
Resealing it every 3 to 5 years?
I'll have to find that out for you. I don't know. I'll get an answer from Mr.
I was just curious if that would help save us money, or do you end up spending more money in the long run trying to do that?
That's a great question. We'll make a note of that, and we'll ask Mr. Brown about that. Okay, I'm sorry, back to me.
Back to you.
Roofing projects. I tried to be a little bit more specific on here, because again, these aren't whole schools. Like Portland High School is the entire school. Gallatin High School is over the shop. At Howard, it's the right side, it's the right side of the school building that needs a roof. Jack Anderson gutters, R.T. Fisher cafeteria, and then another section. Station Camp roof needs work, but it's in sections, so we can get one section at a time. The worst by far section was that section over the gym. And actually that section over the gym was causing a lot of the other leaks because of the runoff. So now that that's fixed, you know, we can move on to the next section of Station Camp. Okay, let me say another area that we're gonna have to think about, right, is, and this is not for next budget year, because if you've looked at land prices, they're astronomically high right now. We'll always want to keep enough in capital so that, like, I'm thinking whenever there's a recession, right, developers have snatched up every piece of land that they can find in Sumner County. But there will come a time when land prices will drop or something like that, and we're going to eventually have to build more schools. Now, I don't think, like, we typically build a high school about once every 18 to 20 years. I would say I wouldn't expect another high school, like a new high school, on that timeline. You know, we're in great shape in terms of, we've got the ability with Liberty Creek and Station Camp. We've got plenty of capacity there. White House is growing, but remember, because we turned the old middle school into an annex, that school before the split between Roberts and Sumner had about 1,500 kids, 1,500 kids, so it'll hold 1,600 kids at White House. We've got plenty of capacity at White House, plenty of capacity at Station Camp, capacity at Liberty Creek. We're gonna catch some pain points at Jack Anderson and Howard. I think one of the things that we're gonna have to watch over the next couple of years, a trend that I think we'll see, for instance, if you look at Creekside, which is the neighborhood at the end of Upper Station Camp and Long Hollow, that neighborhood for like the last 8 years has had about 280 elementary students in it. And what would happen is it was homes that were priced, say, $250 to $400, and families would move in there with elementary age children. And around the time the kids got into middle school, they would move, you know, into a different house. And then somebody else would move in there with elementary kids. I think what we're going to start to see, those houses are now priced between $550 and $650, and with interest rates being 5.5%, 6.5%, 7%, wherever they are right now, I think you're going to see kids grow up. So for instance, I think someone like Burris right now, I think you'll see, like we had been seeing some growth at Burris, like plus 90. This year was like plus 40. I think you're going to see some of that level out. Growth is going to continue to happen in Sumner County at some point, but I don't think we're talking about another high school with like if we built just Liberty Creek, we built Liberty Creek High School and the elementary school and all the campus infrastructure for about $116 million. If you had to build just the high school now, not counting the athletic fields and the elementary schools, it would be around 145, 150. That's what's happened to construction costs. I think you'll see at some point, we'll have to, like I would say in the next 10 years, we're looking at an elementary school and a middle school probably in the Gallatin area. Now where that will be, it could be out towards Castellan Springs, it could be in the city of Gallatin. That's going to be on the horizon, but that's going to be like, we won't be able to build a school until we can do a bond, and I don't see that happening for the next 3 to 5 years. Interest rates have to come down. You know, we're actively paying down the debt incurred over the last 10 years. So it's going to be a little bit of time before you see a bond. So I want everybody to hear, I'm not saying we're building a school. I'm not saying we're getting a bond. I'm not saying we're going to increase taxes, any of that stuff. I'm just saying, though, what we can do is continue to watch if there's a piece of property that comes available. You know, if you look at the price that we got the Liberty Creek land for, anybody on earth would pay that for an acre of land in Cottontown right now.
Ms. Hayes?
Yes, Chairman. Dr. Langford, with these pain points, they use that word, Jack Anderson, Howard, do you project that we are going to have to do a rezone for any of these areas?
No, I would just call it a pain point. Like, I would think the model, I can see the model, like, I think what's going to be really interesting to see what happens with having H.B. Williams and White House Intermediate, because I think the struggle that you're going to have with Jack Anderson is you're landlocked, and there's not much land over there. So I think what you could look at, there's a little bit of land behind Jack Anderson. I could see a scenario where you have another K2, 3, 5 something like that, if we're gonna build a school. I think we'll be, there are some places where, as new subdivisions come in, we will absolutely have to do some rezoning over the next 5 years. But we're gonna, it is a weird time. For instance, you can ask Ms. Brown and Mr. Skinner and Ms. Dam, when we're adding teachers for growth, we added, was it Lakeside Park this year that we added a teacher? We probably haven't added a new teacher at Lakeside Park in 15 years. We actually took a teacher, we dropped a teacher at Jack Anderson for the first time in history since Jack Anderson's been built. Why is that? Because the home values and the interest rates, people are now moving to areas I think you're gonna see growth. You're already seeing growth in White House, in Portland, and Bethpage, and places like that, because it's where young families can afford homes. It's gonna be hard for a young family to come into parts of Hendersonville, Gallatin, and pay $700,000 for a house. And so I think we're gonna have to let the dust settle. I think you'll see, for instance, some of the subdivisions in Gallatin that are coming over, it will absolutely affect how we zone Station Camp, Gallatin, and Liberty Creek, but I think we've got to wait, because I think we all see something like 1,100 houses added or 500 houses added. Some of those will be built over 10 years, and Durham Farms started, 10, 15 years ago? It's been a slow build out. So we don't want to jump the gun and rezone on the anticipation that there's going to be 1,100 houses added in the Schaefer zone. Because those 1,100 houses, and what we're seeing, I was talking to some Gallatin officials the other night, is our county is becoming a haven for retirees because we don't have an income tax and there's a lot of medical assistance and a lot of quality of life things. So we got more people moving in that aren't putting kids into the school system. So, there's just a lot of, I don't know what to call it other than growth weirdness. There's probably a better term, but I think we got to let the dust settle a little bit before we make, and I think, to go back to what I was saying earlier about choice, some of this we can resolve by giving greater choice to parents about where their kids go to school. We can resolve some of this like we've done with the lottery. I think that this will be the last year we do the lottery at Liberty Creek.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the presentation, you made reference a couple times to, upgrading furniture and upgrading some of the whiteboards. A few weeks ago, I had a teacher at Merrill Hyde talk to me about the fact that Benny Bills, with title funds, was able to upgrade their smart boards, and then we removed from Benny Bills. I don't know how accurate the timeline is, but we removed boards that were within just a few years old and put them in surplus. And I know we get at every meeting, I know we get a list that says surplus items are available upon request. Do we have any system in place, any catalog system, that if the school has needs, they can very easily see what we have surplus and make that request for Mr. Brown?
Yeah, that's actually Miss York, Jamie York, y'all met before. Yeah, she keeps a pretty extensive system, and she moves stuff around quite a bit. Sometimes, the nature, for instance, a whiteboard, if it's adhered to a surface, when they come down, they're not screwed in like they were, they're, a lot of them are glued in or something. So when you take them down, or just the wear and tear, the wear and tear on a whiteboard is pretty significant. Now, the problem with some of the things like the smart boards, we generally moved away from smart boards because they're proprietary, they're very expensive, and for instance, some of the ones we got when we did the renovation, I would say at White House High School and Beach High School, we got the cutting edge new projectors with the markers that work. The problem was if you dropped the marker, it ceased to work. What most, and the touch aspect of it was really kind of gimmicky. What you're seeing a lot of schools go to now are LED panels. You get a really big LED panel, and it has about an 80,000 hour lifespan, and the price is minimal. I think you're going to see a whole lot more. Now, I do think that it highlights we need to, a school like Merrill Hyde that's in one of our oldest buildings needs a lot of attention. But I think there's always a way to do better on surplus items, but computers and technology a lot of times has to go because it's past its shelf life. But I think, furniture gets moved around quite a bit. I could ask Ms. York to explain her system, but she's got a pretty sophisticated system and she moves stuff around. Usually when stuff goes out of surpluses.
goes fast. People are like, yep,
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I just didn't know if it would be feasible, you know, even at the teacher level, that a teacher would be able to just log on, see a catalog, say, you know, I could really use a new chair. I don't want to wait in line for the board to approve for me to have a new chair. There's a chair sitting there that seems to be adequate for my needs. Can I just make that request?
I think that one of the things that we're trying to do is create a constant dialogue about what the needs of the school are. Like, for instance, we're changing, you know, like most school systems, a lot of our things were kind of siloed. So, for instance, like when I was a principal, strategic planning, we came and you talked about your test scores. In your budget meeting, you talked about what your needs were. We've started this year in strategic planning meeting, having them identify what their capital and building level needs were. We were able to give that to Mr. Brown and his team in September instead of February when we used to do our budget meetings. They've been able to work throughout the year to try to address some of those needs. We updated those lists in February when we did the budget meeting, but then we're trying also, you know, to have like where there's a continuous conversation. I think it's hard necessarily, like for instance, teachers will contact principals pretty frequently about what their needs are. It's just in terms of the way that we're structured currently, it works best to go through the principal. Now, I think the education piece, I get this a lot. Let me just speak anecdotally and hope that my wife is not listening. You know, she's an art teacher. A lot of schools, a lot of art teachers haven't gotten things because they haven't asked the principal. And so they would tell my wife about it. She would say something to me, and I would say, well, they need to talk to the principal. And then once they talk to the principal, we're like, absolutely, we can do that. And they'd purchase it out of instructional funds. Because our schools have a significant amount of instructional fund money, and they're able to meet a lot of their local needs. Like, I can tell you the entire time I was a principal, the only thing I said no to a teacher for was I had a teacher that wanted to buy hardbound copies of To Kill a Mockingbird, and they were $22 a piece because they were library, and I could buy 7 paperback copies for the same price. I was like, I'd rather just give the kids the paper copies, let them mark on them, and we'll just replace them every year. But I think we can always do better, but I think it's more of a communication thing to say, go to your principal with your needs, and then the principal's feeling, you know, I think they will see, you know, we're somewhere around $22 million in capital spending this year going directly back into the schools. I think as we continue to do that as a board and school system, a lot of that will, and we've caught up, because you got to remember, like, until we did that run of 76 million in 2016, and I'm not, again, I want to be careful. I want to be really clear, like, I am not criticizing any previous commission, any previous school board, any previous director of schools. They did the best they could with the money they had. When you were trying to, you know, Mr. Bills and Mr. Hyde sometimes had to, like, budget knowing that they didn't have money for insurance or diesel in February and try to find money along the way. When you're having to do that, you don't have the money to invest all the time in roofs and stuff like that. So I'm not casting any aspersions on anybody, but we had a lot of catch up. I mean, you're seeing it now. We spent several $100 million on our schools over the last 10 years, and there's still a significant need. And we've got so much square footage, there will always be a need. But I think like part of that now is I think we're in a place now, I realize it's a really long answer to your question, Mr. Graham, but I think we're in a position now where those communication lines can always get better, but I think we've got a structure with Ms. York's team and Mr. Brown's team where we're able to get a lot of those needs met. But I mean, I think it's something we can communicate out. Like if you have a need, communicate it, because we probably got a table, we probably got a desk, and Ms. York would love to move it out of her warehouse and get it into your classroom.
Well, do we ever cycle things out of surplus, or do they just stay there in perpetuity?
Oh, if it's surplus, it's gone.
Okay.
Yeah. But we try to, like, we don't put it into surplus if it's something that can be used somewhere. But we got a lot of stuff that it's well past its shelf life.
Mr. Lancaster.
Just a question. So, again, I'm a numbers guy. Are we anticipating capital next year with all the stuff here? And I know we got stadium, all that. But are we anticipating outside of athletic facility upgrades or whatever? Are we anticipating capital to be more, the same, or less than last year?
So we put 22 million in capital last year. We're gonna have to put more than that. But you're not gonna see $22 million to run like we did this year on primarily school projects, because a significant amount of that's gonna go to athletic facilities. But we've got to allocate enough capital. I don't wanna recreate the same problem that we've had for decades, which is, we put all of our attention here. I mean, to go back to Mr. Lacey's question a few minutes ago, we wanna make sure we got enough money to invest so that the things that we do we're taking care of, so that we're not speeding up the life of those things. We've got to get far enough ahead. So we're not going to be able to spend 22 million on HVAC units and roofs and things like that next year. But we've got to figure out as a board, and we'll have, Ms. Brown and I have actually, we've had 6 meetings for personnel and about 6 meetings for capital. Yeah, and we are hopeful to get, I reached out to Mr. Lawing this morning to see if we could get a revenue projection from the county, so we can start to put a hard number on what we can do. So it's gonna have to be a larger number than we've ever put in capital before, but it's not gonna be like 22 million that's gonna go back into the schools like we did this year. Thankfully, we've addressed a lot of our biggest needs this year, but we've gotta have enough in there to take care of some of these projects, because like as we saw with Merrill Hyde, I mean, any paving project's gonna be a couple $100,000. Roofing projects are going to be at least a couple $100,000. I would like we're going to have to advocate with the legislature to change the law on the bidding, because basically they've knocked us out from being able to use the bidding cooperatives, which are they're just bid at the state and national level, and they save us from having to pay things like engineering fees. Like the cost of that, Chris, you might be able to speak, but I don't want to put Chris on the spot because he's a numbers guy too, but like the cost of that HVAC unit at Indian Lake may go up $7,500,000 or more.
I know, Andy, when we bid one project, if we could have went to the cooperative, we would have saved $100,000.
So we're going to have to see if we can try to get some change. The comptroller is enforcing the law, but we can ask for the law to be changed to make that fair, to meet the needs of school districts and counties. So if we could stack capital projects like HVAC and roofing and things like that, if we could push those off a little bit so that we could save $100,000 to $200,000 on each of those, I prefer to get more bang for our buck on those kind of projects. Does that, Mr. Lange, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. I think what I heard you say in a roundabout way is that we are going to spend the same, right, more probably in capital overall. It's just a certain extent, a huge chunk of it's going to be what we've been talking about for a year now with the athletic stuff.
Yeah.
But and I mean, when you got 53 schools and half of, or more than half of them are getting on up there in age, then I mean it's understandable that you're going to have to spend some money on capital. I just didn't know, just kind of rough, idea, like more or less.
Yeah, I'll be able to give you a much firmer number in about 2 or 3 weeks. We get to our May 7th, and we'll be able to give you a really firm number on what we think we can do for capital. And then I think also, like, we want to have enough in there where if we get $1 million HVAC like if Jack Anderson had been a significantly larger problem, we don't want to be in a position where we got to go through, take any decision-making process off. It's just on an emergency, we've got to hit a school board and a county commission cycle to be able to move money out of reserve to cover something. So we want to move enough into our capital funds. Even if we don't plan to spend it, we're going to need an operational reserve for capital just in case we catch a roof or an HVAC or a piece of equipment or something like that.
Yeah, I think definitely after this past year, we need to have a Murphy line item, just because.
And I think that, we can earmark it and say, we're only going to touch this in the event of, this isn't, let's replace a Cedar Shake sign because they're hideously ugly. Let's get a, this is something where we got a legitimate emergency and we need to move quickly.
Thank you.
you, Dr. Langford.
I'm done.
You're done? All right. Any other questions for Dr. Langford? All right, we're moving on to the next item on the agenda. And discussion regarding draft policy 4.6007, high school final exam exemptions prior to first reading. Ms. Andrews.
Yes, so as you can see, I've added another proposed language on here. I also want to just update, I think previously we had it under a different policy number, but when I was going through and checking with other districts, comparing policies, this 4.6001 is what lined up. So I asked Mr. Johnson if we could update that just so that our policy manual could be consistent. So that's all that changed with those was to line that. But after the presentation from Ms. Miller and honestly just doing some thinking as far as what has been expected of my students in high school, students across the board, what we're seeing when they leave high school and what's expected of them, looking at other districts and what they're asking of their students, I felt like it was good to take a step back and ask why. Like, what's the purpose? Why are we giving exams? Why would we give exemptions and so forth? And I came to the conclusion of, if I step back and then take away the, well, this is the way it's always been done, and kind of get back and start at the foundation and build up, was we're actually doing our kids a disservice by allowing exam exemptions. And why I say that is, if you have your typical student who works hard, that maybe is, you know, taking standard classes, even honors classes, but they're not taking an AP or dual enrollment class, then other than an EOC, as long as they don't miss more than 3 days of school, they could go their entire high school career and never take a cumulative exam. Yet, when they go and do things after high school, whether it's they're going to have to take a job placement test, whether they're going to take the test for the military, whether they're going to go to college, they're not going to be prepared. They're not going to have study skills that they need in order to be successful. Also looking in if we give them the exemptions, you know, they know what our kids are smart, and they know how to figure out exactly what the minimum amount they can do to get what they need. And I don't think that should be what our expectation is for our kids, is minimum. We should have high expectations for our kids. And so that's why I have structured it the way that it is, that the only kids that would get an exemption would be seniors. And seniors who have a 70 or higher, which I do want to emphasize that because of our new grading scale, a 70 is a C. So if they have a C, which is passing, then they can make the decision on that. And I feel like if we have them take an exam all through high school, that by the time they get to the senior year, they understand the impact of that. So if they go, hey, I'm okay with the 70, I know what that's going to do to my GPA, and I'm okay with it, then that's a decision that they can make. Obviously without any serious disciplinary action, ISS or OSS, and then if they take a course such as AP, dual enrollment, dual credit type of classes that are required exams, those are not exemptions. I feel like after hearing from several principals with the attendance piece, I feel like there's definitely some validity to think about what we're asking of our students when we're tying attendance to exemptions. I think we've seen it last week when it came to weather. I think we've seen it, you know, this week when it came to the eclipse of like, well, but am I going to be exempt from an exam? Exempt from an exam. Is that really that bad that we're going to ask our kids to take an exam? Or they're going to make choices within their families. I also got to thinking, like, well, what's the difference between a student who gets the flu, they can't necessarily help that, and they miss 3 days of school, versus a kid who goes on a club trip, they miss 3 days of school. Both of those students miss 3 days of instruction. I understand one was school business, but they still miss 3 days of instruction. So I don't like tying attendance to it. Again, I understand why our schools are doing that, to draw students in. I would just hope that if we do a policy that does remove attendance, that we will seek ways to get to the root of why our students aren't attending and how can we address those needs. I know we also talked about high school GPA. I know Mr. Graham spoke on that. And I did a lot of thinking about, okay, that's true, a student works, they take, an exam, and it does have the possibility of lowering their high school GPA. I would hope that would happen. The desire would be, if that was going to happen, it would happen their freshman year. And if that did happen their freshman year, they still have multiple opportunities to then work hard, do extra things, and to bring their GPA up. What I thought on the flip side of that is, do we make it too easy for our kids in our schools with the exemptions for them to get a 4.0 or so forth with their GPA? That does mean more college dollars. But then we're going to send them to college and they've not ever taken a cumulative exam. They don't do well in college, then they're not keeping that scholarship. Then they're taking on financial aid, that then long-term affects other decisions that they may be able to make. So I'd rather the risk be lower while they're in high school and have to learn some of those study skills and tenacity and grit and perseverance, and to learn those life skills so that it does then carry over to when they're out of school and they're able to keep the scholarship, they're able to make the teams and do all the other things. So that's the basis behind my thought process, and I know there are discussions right now about possibly not continuing EOCs. I think, is that correct?
Yeah, and I'm wondering on all of our policies on this, if we need to start using the language instead of EOC, like a state-provided examination, because then we don't have to come back and change the policy.
And I do have that sort of language in this one, that it is state-provided, and it just says EOC, which we could take out the EOC portion of that, but
I just thought of that as you were talking, because there's a good chance that if the House bill in any form passes, it's going to dramatically remake high school testing. And basically you're looking at 3 tests in high school plus the ACT.
so it's not, so in that, so that would be easy language to change on that. And then obviously too, if for some reason we could easily remove that paragraph in its entirety if that's what's needed to happen. I thought it was very, very eye-opening when Ms. Miller presented the number of days after an EOC test, how many additional days of instruction. I will be honest and tell you that I'm the parent that in our current policy it says that if a student takes an EOC, then they don't take a final exam. And I was very adamant with one of my children in a particular class because the teacher was going to give a test. It was going to be on an exam day. And I said no, because they're exempt. And we went back and forth, and I'm like, but if you're giving a test on an exam day, that she's exempt, she doesn't have to come to school that day. Where if we take that exemption out of it, then they would still be able to give a test over the instruction, which could be, it was like 3 weeks even still of instructional days, but it just could not be weighted to the extent of a final exam. So that was my thought process on that.
Thank you, Ms. Andrews. Mr. Lacy?
Thank you, Chair. At our, I guess the last meeting that we discussed all these final exam exemption policies, that we were just going to leave it up to the local principal. I know at the end of the meeting you mentioned that more government isn't always a good thing. I really hope that we leave this up to the local principal to make the decisions what's best for their students.
Thank you, Mr. Lacy. Mr. Lancaster?
Got a couple of questions for you on this, but also, we had said there was some concern from a legal standpoint of tying these, which this doesn't impact yours since it doesn't tie it to attendance. But before we, I guess, pick any of these, or if we, or I guess pick any of these or stay with what we got, I guess those are 4 options on the table. Are we going to get something from legal?
Yeah, we decided it was probably not best for us to give legal advice, and with none of us being attorneys, so.
Right.
Ms. Herron took her research that she had found in the court cases that were shared with her and forwarded those to Mr. Presnell, and he's looking at them to give us an update on it.
That was part one. So, Ms. Andrews, your policy here, a couple questions. So you're stating, if I understand this right, on paragraph 2, the first line, all students in high school will take so are we now requiring a teacher to give a comprehensive final exam? Is that what you're saying? Because I guess my question, or hearing some things from Ms. Miller, there's, some classes it wasn't necessarily a comprehensive final, they just gave a final that could be over the last portion of what was going on in class. So is that what you're saying is?
So the paragraph following that, I feel like clears that up, that appropriate examinations shall be developed and administered to students in courses without an in-course exam. They may include written tests, student projects, portfolios, or other assessment measures developed by teachers.
Okay. I guess I see that, but it just seems like when that line says all students in high school courses will take a comprehensive, I don't know, to me that reads, and that's kind of what I was trying to figure out. Does that mean? So
it should just say final examinations?
Yeah, I think when you add that comprehensive line, it makes me think, well, that's
yeah, I mean.
That's kind of, I guess, unclear to me. Now, it might be clear to everybody else. I just didn't want it to say, hey, the school board is stating that we are going to, if we have finals, it's going to be it's going to be a comprehensive final in every class. And some classes, obviously, that might be what they want, but some classes, just the nature of the class might not work.
I think removing that word doesn't change the nature of it, so I don't have a problem doing that.
Second question. When you say, therefore, all Sumner County high school students who are in 12th grade shall be eligible to be exempt, are we saying, we're basically saying, hey, if you get a 70 or above, the teacher has to exempt you?
Yes, that if they have if they're 70 above, then they can. However, they shall be exempt, but they don't have to be. So a student could elect, even if they have that grade, if they want to take the exam to make their grade better or whatever. They do not.
The student has the choice. The teacher does not have the choice. Is that what we're saying?
Yes.
Okay. Those are my questions. I just make sure I'm.
Ms. Lancaster, Ms. Andrews?
Yes, and I want to address about leaving it up to each individual principal. That's what we've done for a long time, and I can tell you by talking to different parents, specifically talking about the weather and the eclipse and how that's handled, it's chaotic across the district. It makes it very difficult when somebody says, well, is this going to count against me? And for them to come to me as a board member, and I go, I have no idea, because I know what the exam exemption policy is at my kid's school, but I don't necessarily know what it is at Gallatin High School or in Westmoreland or Portland. And so, then that's frustrating on a parent, because they're like, and as I've mentioned, we have lots of blended families across our district. I don't know if you've ever dealt with, just within my own family, I've had to deal with kids, is this kid exempt? Is this kid not exempt? Did you have an ESC? Did you not have an ESC? I've got a kid at this school, and I've got a kid at this school, and what time do you get out? That's just my own immediate family, and I see them every single day. To have blended families that then they're doing that, and they're, this school, and wait, what, y'all miss the same amount of days, but wait, you're exempt, but you're not exempt, and it makes it really chaotic. I've looked across to other districts. They have consistent policies for the district as a whole. I think it makes it equitable across the district. I know he said, we don't want to tell our principals what to do. Our whole policy manual is us telling our principals what to do. We just went through that with dress code. You know, we made that consistent across the district. I just feel like this is something else that for our students, for our families, and really even, you know, you have a teacher that moves from one school to another. They don't know because they're like, well, this is what I did at my other school. What do you mean this isn't what we do? So to have it across the district, I think makes it less confusing, less chaotic for everybody involved.
Ms. Andrews, Mr. Graham?
I agree. That's why I proposed the policy change in the first place, is so that we could have consistency. And also, to add to that, one principal retiring with their preferences and a new principal coming in with different preferences in the midst of a high school career. So if you're freshman, sophomore, junior, and you've had it one way, and now your senior year, it's completely different. You know, I hate to use the word unfair, but that's unfair. I agree with the sentiment. I do, because that's why I introduced this. Two things. I think final exam exemptions are an incentive. They're an incentive to achieve. So me personally, and I understand the argument both sides on attendance. That, you know, in my policy, that's why it was excused absences. But I get it. That's gummy. That muddies the water. I understand. I understand both sides of the attendance aspect. I've talked to parties on both sides that really like the attendance aspect because it keeps the kids at school, and like you said, it can be detrimental because it causes anxiety if you've got those parent notes and you feel like you're right there at the edge and it's going to be unexcused and the world is crumbling. I get all that. The 70, I don't think that promotes achievement. I don't think that says to a student, continue to be studious and we'll reward you with the final exam exemption. Here's what I'd kind of like to do. You brought it up with dress code. Before we made a decision on changing and overhauling our dress code policy, we had a pretty comprehensive poll of our faculty, of our principals, of our community, and of our families. Maybe before we move too much further in creating a policy that is, in my opinion, probably going to affect families far more than style, maybe we could set up a committee and have a similar poll of our faculty, of our principals, of our community, and of our families to see what their overall input is and see what's important to them, whether it's the attendance, whether it's, you know, freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior, or just senior, whether it's you know, a B, an A, a 70 or above, that kind of thing. I think this is so important and will have such an effect on the trajectory of our students that I really like to have a comprehensive input from everybody kind of going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Graham. Mr. Lancaster?
Where are we in this? I mean, have we crossed the threshold that this is going to be a not next fall, but next fall? Or where are we at?
I mean, I think schools are going to start printing their handbooks in the next month or so, month and a half. We've got a little bit of time, but I mean, I think too, like, some of it is just going to depend on what happens, because if the House bill passes, it's going to dramatically alter, you know, we're going to have to change every handbook in the county, and we're going to have to change board policy, and we're going to have to change curriculum guide, and a whole bunch of other things for high school. So in that case, then we've got more time because it's going to take a couple months to unwind all that stuff.
Okay. I was kind of trying to figure out where we are.
Well, I mean, because, you know, like, the thing is, like, if those changes to high school testing takes place, it'll have to be approved at the national level, because the Department of Education will have to approve Tennessee's education accountability part, because it would change it. Because right now, all those EOCs are written into our accountability, and it changes. For instance, we just went through a big thing with Algebra 2 about how that counts in the ACT. This would, I mean, personally, I like this aspect better. It would use the ACT instead of Algebra 2 scores. I think that would create a much more powerful incentive for kids to do better on the ACT, and I think we desperately need that right now. Because I think that our kids' performance, they underperform on the ACT where they could, because there's not proper motivation for every student to succeed, do as well as they could on the ACT. But you're talking about, like, nothing goes through the Department of Education quickly. So I don't even know what that timeline would be, whether these would be changes that are passed into law now and go into effect the following year, or if they're things like the way the House bill is currently written, go into effect immediately. So, if that's the case, then we've got till August, because we're going to have to redo everything. But I would say if we were going to do a policy, I would think we would need to do it by the end of the school year. Most student handbooks are done online, so they're easier to change. But I think it would be, to be fair to our schools, if we could get this done by the end of May, I think that if we're going to do it for next year, I would say May would be. I wouldn't want to go much past May if we're going to change what schools are doing. I mean, theoretically, you could do it. You'd have up until school started. Because what you don't want to do with high schools being on block schedule is have one exam exemption policy for first semester and then different for second, because that affects valedictorian, salutatorian, GPA, things like that. You want the playing field to be the same both semesters.
That's all I was trying to figure out where we were. There's a lot to think about on all of them, I guess. I do think we're at a point where we probably, personally, I think we've got to get some sort of uniformity across the district. I just think there's too many variables that we just need that. So.
As much as I like the idea of polling the public and getting an idea of what people want, I think we have to be cautious that if the poll comes back that everybody wants the exemptions to be linked to attendance, then we have to put our better judgment in looking at our legal liability and have to put that over the public's opinion. If there is liability because of absences and discrimination and people who have special needs and that kind of thing, and puts us in the crosshairs of a lawsuit, we would have to make a decision based on what we think is best, even if the polls come back for something else. I think we're put here to make decisions based on what we think is best. And sometimes that may not be what the public wants, but we have to take into consideration the liabilities and other things that may not affect one family, but it would affect another.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Will Mr. Presnell be here at our meeting?
He should be.
Great, in 2 weeks. Also, the best preparation for an ACT, is that a comprehensive exam?
It is.
All in, all done? All right, we're adjourned.